So today, we're going to talk about a nation that's standing at a really pivotal moment, Tanzania. The title for this explainer, Tanzania at a Crossroads, actually comes from a call for academic papers, which I thought was fascinating. It perfectly captures this idea of a country facing history-defining choices about its politics, its identity, and, yeah, its place in the world.
But what does that really mean, to be at a crossroads? It's such a powerful phrase, right? And for Tanzania, this isn't just some poetic metaphor. It's very, very real. It's not about one single decision, but a whole cascade of them, all happening at the same time.
Exactly. It's one of those moments where the path you choose today is going to fundamentally shape the country for generations to come. We're talking about the big stuff, core questions about what their democracy looks like, who their international allies are, and even the very structure of the nation itself. So let's break down what these different paths actually look like.
Here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the test facing its democracy. Then, we'll dive into the tricky global balancing act it's performing. After that, we'll examine the state of its internal union, ask about the true price of economic progress, and finally, we'll explore how Tanzanians themselves are imagining a brand new future.
All right, first up, the political path. This is all about the internal struggles over Tanzania's democratic system.
This timeline really tells a story, doesn't it? It starts with a lot of hope under President Samia Suluhu Hassan and her 4Rs reform agenda. That's reconciliation, resilience, reforms, and rebuilding. But then, the story starts to shift. The source material points to a really tense political climate during the 2024 local elections, followed by a critical 2025 general election where major opposition parties were actually barred. And all of this has led to a consolidation of power for the ruling CCM party.
This situation has led academics to use a very specific term: electoral authoritarianism. So, what is that? Well, it's basically a system that has all the decorations of a democracy. It holds elections, people vote, but the actual structures in place make it incredibly difficult for anyone but the ruling party to win. The outcome is pretty much a foregone conclusion.
And this brings us right to the heart of the matter, with a question pulled straight from the source. What does all this really reveal about the health of multi-party democracy in Tanzania? It suggests a system that's under some serious strain, where the appearance of choice might not match the reality of power. That is a tough thing for any nation to grapple with.
Now, these domestic politics, they don't happen in a bubble, right? So let's zoom out to the global stage and look at Tanzania's foreign policy choices, which are a whole different kind of crossroads.
And this slide just lays out the dilemma perfectly. On one side, you have the pull of Washington, with its traditional diplomatic ties and its focus on things like human rights. But on the other, you have the pull of Beijing, offering billions in infrastructure investment, like through the Belt and Road Initiative, often without the same political strings attached. Tanzania is literally caught between these two giant gravitational pulls.
So what's a country to do? Well, Tanzania is trying to stick to its guns, holding on to its historic tradition of non-alignment, which has been a cornerstone of its foreign policy since independence. But let's be real. In today's world of intense competition between superpowers, trying to walk that independent middle path is harder than it's ever been.
Okay, let's bring our focus back home, inside Tanzania's borders, to the social path. This one gets at a really fundamental question about the country's identity, the union between the mainland and Zanzibar.
60 years. For 60 years, the union between mainland Tanzania and the islands of Zanzibar has been the very foundation of the modern Tanzanian state. But, like any relationship that's lasted that long, it's got its fair share of challenges.
And here are some of the big ones. The source material points to ongoing arguments over how resources are shared, how Zanzibar is represented in the government, and even deeper questions about sovereignty. These aren't small issues, and they're fueling some serious calls for constitutional reform. Some people are even proposing a total shift to a three-tier government to give Zanzibar way more autonomy.
This brings us to the economic crossroads, and this is a big one, the promises and the perils of the country's development path. The promise here is massive. I mean, just imagine it. Huge hydropower dams providing clean energy, a state-of-the-art railway crisscrossing the country, bustling ports driving global trade, and a booming mining sector. These are the kinds of mega projects that are designed to completely remake an economy.
But, and this is a huge but, that transformation has a price. The source material is very clear that this progress comes with a significant human cost.
It points directly to things like land disputes and the displacement of indigenous communities, most famously the Maasai from the Ngorongoro Conservation Area, which has sparked a huge international debate.
And that all leads to this incredibly powerful question. Another direct quote from the source: how do you explain this paradox? You've got robust economic growth on paper, but for so many people on the ground, poverty is still just a daily reality. So the question becomes, where is all the wealth from this development actually going? So, with all these challenges, all these difficult paths, where in the world does Tanzania go from here? Well, our final section looks at how Tanzanians themselves are trying to answer that very question.
And this is so crucial. The conversation about Tanzania's future isn't just happening in government offices or corporate boardrooms. As the source material really emphasizes, it's the artists, the thinkers, the activists. They're the ones on the front lines, creating and debating totally different visions for what their country could become.
And look at where they're getting their inspiration from. It's this incredible mix of ideas. They're looking back to the legacy of Ujamaa, that unique brand of African socialism from their first president. They're plugging into bigger movements like Pan-Africanism and East African integration. And they're even looking to the future with concepts like Afrofuturism to imagine a totally different way forward. This is a vibrant, living debate about the very soul of the nation.
At the end of the day, while Tanzania's story is completely its own, the choices it's facing are universal. How do you balance development with human rights? How do you navigate a world of competing superpowers? How do you define what democracy means for you? So the final question isn't just for Tanzania. It's really for all of us. When you're standing at a crossroads, what path should a nation choose?